What's up, sports fans? This is the NCAA College Sports Channel. It is time to give you my upset alert games heading into Week 11 of the 2025 college football season. Going back to last week's video, in week number 10, the upsets that I picked out, the 8 games that I picked out for you, 2 of them turned out to be upsets. So it's 2 out of the 8 games turned out to be upsets last week. We saw SMU, of course, pull off the upset against Miami. That one was on the video, and then we had Tennessee going down to Oklahoma. So those were the 2 upsets that happened last week. And going into Week 11, we had the first playoff rankings last night. You got to wonder if the pressure starts to build for some of these top 25 college football playoff teams, and then also sometimes for the top 10 teams as well, as we head into the final 3 weeks here of November, and also going into conference championship weekend as well. So I picked out 8 games total not 4 games each, but we're going to go from the least likely upset and work our way to the most likely upset in my opinion. So let's go ahead and get started here with this first game. And I don't really think an upset will happen here, but still, I'm going to put this on the video. Navy at Notre Dame. This one is at 7:30 Eastern Time on NBC. Yeah, Notre Dame is favored by 26.5 points. Notre Dame ranked number 10 last night in the playoff rankings. I'll be honest, I haven't watched Notre Dame ever since the win over USC, which they obviously played pretty well in that game. And, they ran the football in that game pretty well as well. And they were pretty dominant in that game. So is that the Notre Dame team that is going to show up here in this game against Navy? That'll obviously be the question mark, because Notre Dame, I feel like, did not play that well against Boston College last week. And yeah, that was kind of not the last time I watched Notre Dame, but yeah, USC was the last time I watched them. But you look at Navy, they're coming off their first loss from last week. You got to wonder if they'll bounce back here. Were they overlooking, North Texas last week and looking ahead to this game? That's obviously a big question mark. Navy is a pretty good football team, but they're not really that talented compared to Notre Dame, if that makes sense. And Navy is going to have to go for that triple option, of course. Notre Dame going to have to prepare for that triple option. I mean, we've seen in the past some teams struggle with it, but Notre Dame has not really struggled with it under Marcus Freeman. So I don't really think Notre Dame's going to struggle in this game. I expect Notre Dame to take care of business. This game was not even close last year. I don't really expect it to be close again this season. And I think that's kind of the reason why Notre Dame is favored by 26.5 points. Moving on, we got California at Louisville. This one's at 7 o'clock Eastern Time on ESPN2. Louisville also favored by at least 27 points. 20.5 is the point spread there for the Cardinals. That's a pretty big number in my opinion. That's the difference here between these two teams. I feel like Louisville is taking on a pretty solid California team. Cal is coming off a pretty close loss to Virginia, which obviously they kind of blew that game. I mean, they made it close, but then the pick 6, of course, was the difference last week. But you look at Louisville, I don't think they've played their best football in the last couple of games. I mean, they've been playing lesser competition. You got to wonder if the pressure starts to build here for the Cardinals. They're ranked number 15th in the college football playoff rankings. That's a really high ranking there for the Louisville Cardinals. So you got to wonder if the pressure will start to build here for the Cardinals. But the good news is they're playing at home in this one, and I think the crowd will be fired up, of course, because it's a night game. And Cal's got to travel pretty far, so I don't know if I see Cal pulling off the upset. Again, Cal is a pretty solid 5-4 team, but I think Louisville definitely should be able to take care of business, and that's the reason why I think the spread is at 20.5 points. Next up, we have BYU at Texas Tech, the game of the weekend. This one's at noon Eastern Time on ABC. Texas Tech is favored by 10. I'm kind of surprised that this is an ABC game instead of like a Fox game, like the big noon kickoff. But College Game Day is going to be down there, so maybe that's the reason why they decided to make this an ABC game. It's a top 10 matchup. It's one of the biggest Big 12 matchups that I think we've had probably since, the Utah and Texas Tech game. The pressure really is on BYU here in this one because they haven't lost a game yet, and I think, the pressure will start to build for them. They're playing on the road against a really good, talented Texas Tech team. Texas Tech has got a pretty good defense, and their offense it hasn't really looked the same since, but it's still good enough. And, they've had some quarterback injury issues, but still, Texas Tech is a pretty good football team. And by the way, that's a pretty big number to be favored in a Big 12 game. Texas Tech, again, favored by 10, but it would be an upset if BYU were to pull this off, especially in a tough road environment. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Texas Tech did, give BYU their first loss of the season. And this is kind of a game that kind of decides who has the best path to make it to the Big 12 championship. So this one should be a good one, top 10 matchup. Again, at noon Eastern time on ABC, and College Game Day going to be down here for this massive Big 12 matchup. Next up, LSU at Alabama. This one is at 7:30 Eastern time on also ABC. So this is the primetime ABC game. Alabama is also favored by 10. Alabama's on a winning streak. They haven't lost a game since the Florida State loss. I still look back at that game. They should have definitely won that game. Last time, though, that we saw Alabama, they struggled against South Carolina. If you don't remember that game, that was a couple of weeks ago, so they haven't played a game since that time. And yeah, they did struggle in that game. So you got to wonder if Alabama, if they're going to feel the pressure here because they're ranked number 4 in the playoff rankings, and they're taking on an LSU team, of course, that fired Coach Brian Kelly. We know the story there. I mean, there's a lot of, things going behind the scenes there for the Tigers. But, these interim head coaches, you don't really know what to expect from interim head coaches, and we've seen that a lot this year. We've seen it with UCLA when they beat Penn State, and then also some, we saw Penn State, of course, compete with Ohio State last week in the first half. So you don't really know what to expect here from an interim coach if you're Alabama. I do expect Alabama to take care of business. I know it's a rivalry game, but LSU's inconsistency on offense has it's really just been awful for LSU. So Alabama should be able to take care of business, but I don't know if it will be a blowout, but I think it will be a game where Alabama at least wins by double digits. Moving on, we got Georgia at Mississippi State, another SEC matchup here at noon Eastern time on ESPN. Georgia favored by 7.5. That is a really low number here against a 5-4 Mississippi State team, which I have no problem with it because, again, the slow starts for Georgia this year. Georgia has been also inconsistent. I mean, they've been able to win games, but they have been so inconsistent in these slow starts and then also had to come back from behind in some of these games as well. They've had to come back from behind against Ole Miss and then Tennessee, and then last week they had to come back from behind on a final drive to beat Florida, and they nearly lost that game. A fourth down defensive stop really, got them back in the game, and then they went down the field and scored a touchdown. So you got to wonder if the pressure will start to build here for Georgia as we head into the final weeks in November. Mississippi State hasn't won a conference game, I believe, but this is a really solid Mississippi State football team. I mean, the record doesn't show it, but they are a 5-4 team and they're a pretty solid football team. I think they will be competitive in this game, and I wouldn't be surprised maybe if we did see an upset here. So yeah, keep an eye on this one. This one definitely could shake up the playoff race if Georgia were to go down this weekend. Next up, we have Texas A&M at Missouri. This one is at 3:30 Eastern time on ABC. Texas A&M favored by 7. The last time we saw Missouri was against Vanderbilt. They lost that game by 7 in a defensive battle. Bo Burbilla out for the rest of the season. You got to wonder if that's going to affect the Tigers the rest of the way. Texas A&M coming off of a bye week. This is a really good Texas A&M football team. We saw how dominant they were against LSU a couple weeks ago, and then also how dominant they've been pretty much all season long. I mean, they've had some close games here and there. A couple of them against Arkansas and Notre Dame, but they've been able to win those 2 games. So you got to wonder if Texas A&M will go down here for the first time this season. I really don't know. I feel like I don't have confidence with Missouri, though, because Bo Burbilla out for the rest of the year. I think, that's going to affect Missouri just a little bit. Although the backup quarterback came in against Vanderbilt, played pretty well for them, but I just don't know if he has what it takes to pull off a huge upset against a top 5 Texas A&M team. And I think this Texas A&M team is for real. So I don't know if an upset will happen, but you never know. It's November, and this is chaos month. So Missouri definitely capable of pulling off an upset. And then we go to Wake Forest at Virginia. This one is at 7 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN. Virginia's favored by 6.5. Virginia coming off the win against Cal on the road out west. That was a huge win there for the Cavaliers. Virginia looking to keep the momentum going. But you got to wonder if the pressure is going to start building here for Virginia. Yeah, they're 8-1. They've been a pretty good football team all season long. But they're ranked number 14 in the playoff rankings. And, they got all that hype. And, you got to wonder if the hype will get to them in this game. Wake Forest is not a bad 5-3 team. Yeah, they're coming off a blowout loss to Florida State. But maybe that game was just a fluke. Maybe they went over SMU as a fluke. We never know which SMU or which Wake Forest team is going to show up in this one. Will it be the Wake Forest team that we saw against Georgia Tech and SMU? They nearly came close to beating Georgia Tech, but they beat, of course, SMU. Is it the SMU team or the Wake Forest team going to show up like they did against SMU, or will it be the Wake Forest team that we saw from last week? That's definitely a big question mark. But Virginia's playing at home, so you got to feel like they'll feel confident here with the home crowd behind them. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if we did see Virginia lose their first conference game of the season. And then finally, we got the most likely upset, Oregon at Iowa. This one is at 3:30 Eastern time on CBS. Oregon is favored by 6 points in this one. And I'll be honest, I haven't watched Oregon since the Indiana loss. It's kind of been a while, and the last time I think I saw them was probably against Wisconsin. They didn't look great in that game. Dante Moore went down with the injury. I think he's just fine, though, so I think Oregon definitely will be fine with him in there. But they're playing a really tough environment here. This is an Iowa team that's a pretty solid football team, and I'll be honest, I haven't watched Iowa since their loss to probably Indiana, which you go back to that game, they only lost that game by 5. So I think Iowa's got a pretty good shot here to pull off a major upset. It not only ruins the playoff hopes probably for Oregon, maybe it not ruin their playoff hopes, but also their Big Ten championship hopes, if that makes sense. Both of these teams ranked in the top 20 in the playoff rankings. I think Iowa will come in really fired up for this one. And then also Oregon's got to travel. We know how difficult that is for some West Coast teams and then some teams that have to travel out west. We saw that a lot last year where a team that travels out west and then across the East Coast, it really tends to give a lot of teams some trouble. So this is a massive game. This is a very important game for Oregon. If they don't win this game, then, the Big Ten championship hopes are over. But it's also going to be a really tough path to make it to the playoffs still. But if Iowa wins, that'll really set the tone here for the rest of the season for them. So I think this is the most likely upset here to happen. So, Oregon is only favored by 6. So those are all my official upset alert games heading into Week 11 of the 2025 college football season. And also the second weekend here of Chaos Month in the month of November. Let me guys know what you think about my upset alert games down in the comments below. And out of all these 8 games, which team do you see pulling off the biggest upset down in the comments below as well? Thank you for watching this video and stay tuned for more on the NCAA College Sports YouTube channel.